You can fake strength. You can fake confidence. You can fake kindness, ambition, and discipline for a while. But there are a few subtle, precise behaviors that betray the truth. And Machiavelli knew exactly how to detect them. Because in his world, surrounded by liars, opportunists, and cowards, he could not afford to guess who was strong and who was simply loud. He had to know. And he learned quickly. Weakness does not shout. It slips through the cracks. While strong men stay calm in silence, weak men expose themselves through patterns they do not even notice. Once you spot these patterns in your enemies, your colleagues, or even yourself, you gain an advantage. Machiavelli used it like a dagger, the power to identify weakness before it became a threat. These behaviors do not seem obvious. In fact, most people would miss them. But Machiavelli would not. He studied men like a predator studies movement, and he discovered 3 behaviors that instantly give weak men away. Let us begin with the first and perhaps most subtle behavior: over-justification. Weak men explain, strong men decide. That is it. A man who constantly defends his choices, over-explains his actions, or tries to make others understand him is not being honest. He is being insecure. Machiavelli observed this in court all the time. A prince who was confident in his authority spoke little. But a minister, a merchant, a man pretending to be important, he talked constantly. He needed others to agree with his logic so he could feel sure of it himself. It is the behavior of someone whose identity depends on being liked, not feared, not respected, liked. Machiavelli would see this for what it really is: a man begging for permission to exist. Over-justification is a smokescreen for fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of power. And the truth is, any man who needs approval before he moves will never be trusted with real power, because power requires silence. Power requires conviction. Power requires the ability to make a move and not explain it to anyone. So the next time someone keeps explaining their opinion, repeating their point, trying to sound reasonable or nice or morally correct, you are not hearing strength. You are hearing inner collapse in slow motion, but that is only the first behavior. The second is even colder: weaponized niceness. This is the most dangerous form of weakness because it wears a smile. Machiavelli knew that the most spineless men did not always look afraid. They looked friendly, helpful, accommodating. But it was not kindness, it was submission disguised as virtue. Machiavelli studied this in public figures constantly. He wrote, "A prince must know how to do wrong and not use it unless compelled." In other words, restraint is not the same as fear, but weaponized niceness is always fear. It is the posture of someone who does not know how to stand tall on his own, so he tries to stay small, hoping no one steps on him. And when you see this behavior in someone, this compulsive friendliness that turns sour under pressure, you have found someone who cannot be trusted with power. Because real power demands the ability to set boundaries, to say no without apology, to face tension without collapsing into false smiles. Machiavelli watched for this behavior, like a hawk, because it told him, this man's loyalty will break the moment it's tested. But there is a third behavior more desperate, more exposed, and utterly humiliating to witness. When you see it, you know you are standing in front of a man who fears being insignificant more than anything else. The third behavior, the one that made Machiavelli instantly classify a man as weak, was display addiction. You have seen it before: the man who always needs to be seen, the one who cannot sit still without recognition, the one who posts constantly, speaks loudly, exaggerates every win, and turns every moment into a performance. Machiavelli saw these men everywhere, and he understood something most people still do not. The man who needs to be seen fears being forgotten. That fear, it is weakness, but not the kind that comes from poverty or lack of opportunity, the kind that comes from identity rot. Because display addiction is not confidence. It is the panic response of someone who has no internal foundation. They think if they are not being talked about, liked, praised, or envied, then they do not matter. Their value disappears the moment attention does. This is precisely why Machiavelli saw them as liabilities. These men will do anything for attention: lie, embellish, betray. They will expose secrets, turn on allies, make enemies out of thin air as long as someone is watching. Because in their mind, silence means death, stillness means irrelevance, and the worst fate is to be forgotten. Machiavelli knew a man addicted to display is a puppet waiting to be controlled, and if you ever want to ruin him, you do not need to attack. You just ignore him. Take away the spotlight. Cut off the applause. Make him feel invisible. Watch how quickly he breaks. Because while strong men train in private, grow in silence, and strike without warning, The weak man cannot survive 5 minutes without being noticed. He is easy to predict, easier to manipulate, and impossible to trust. This is why Machiavelli feared weakness more than wickedness, because at least a wicked man knows what he wants. The weak man, he wants everything but will trade anything to get it. And when you combine all three behaviors, the compulsive justifier, the fake nice appeaser, and the attention addict, you do not get a villain. You get a void, a man so hollow that he will take the shape of anyone stronger than him. And that is what Machiavelli feared most. Not the loud ones, not the cruel ones, but the empty ones. Because emptiness can be filled with anything. And when the wrong person gets close, they fill it with destruction. But here is where Machiavelli took it further. He did not just identify weakness. He used it. He turned these behaviors into tools, predictors, leverage points. He knew that spotting a weak man early could mean the difference between power and betrayal, because these men do not break when tested. They melt. And in politics, in war, in business, in trust, you cannot afford to depend on someone who melts. So how do you protect yourself? How do you act like Machiavelli? You watch. You stop judging people by their smiles or words or titles, and you start judging them by their psychological patterns. You study what they do when no one agrees with them, when no one is watching, when no one praises them, or when no one gives them a reason to act good. You look for the cracks, because the strong man does not panic in silence. He builds, he sharpens, he plans. The weak man, he performs, he explains, he crumbles. And once you can tell the difference, instantly you gain a weapon most people never even think to sharpen: discernment. The power to see not just who someone pretends to be, but who they will become the moment life stops going their way.